guys. So Matt from Prime Angling in Worthing. So today we're going to go with Lure Basics Part 2. So we're going to put the second instalment in on this one. We're at that time of year now when it is actually starting to kick off. There are fish on the beach. It is well worth getting out, having a crack. Plenty of bass coming up, some good fish coming up as well, and then in amongst them we got a few gars kicking around and plenty of other species that will take a lure. But we are going to have a look at bass lures. We're going to have a look at some hard baits, some soft plastics, some metals, and kind of how we fish them, why we fish them, and generally get on it. So let's have a little we'll have a close-up, scoot down, and I'll talk you through what we're up to. Okay, so up close with the hard baits, this is where we're going to start on this one. I don't know how many takes we're on now. It is way too easy to get waffling on about all different things that actually don't really matter when you're making a Lure Basics video. So what we've got here is your hard baits, hard plastics. I have kind of split them into 3 categories to keep it simple. We have deep divers, deep runners if you like, shallow runners, and top waters. So let's make this simple. Deep divers, generally a deep diving lure, just making sure I've got this in shot, will have quite a pronounced bib. This is for the water to pass over, and this will then in turn force the lure down. The bib also dictates the action that will be imparted into the lure, so whether that be kind of a side wobble, a little kind of lift and roll, they're all slightly different. I'm not getting into it. So generally deeper marks, places where you want to get that lure down, trolling or anything like that, where you want to have this down working in the water and you want to cover a bit of ground. Generally, let's get this easy. So you've got a few different options on these. So the main one will be, as you can see on these two, is on here we will have floating and we will have a sinking. So floating, obviously if you stop moving, stop reeling, stop everything else, the lure will just float up to the top. Sinking, the lure will just continually fall all the way down till it hits the deck, and then you can start the motion again. To make things easier, when you come into a shop and you see kind of the amount of lures like we've got in here, it can be massively intimidating, and asking questions every 5 seconds. You know, I mean, if you're not that kind of person who wants to get into a chat with whoever's working at the time, you can always switch, you know, open up, pick the boxes off the shelf, have a look. In amongst all of the random Japanese caricatures, you will have the information you need. So size 125mm, weight 20.5 grams. Again, 125, 23, so this is obviously the sinking, this is the floating. But what you will have on here is you will have a running depth. So this will run between 50 to 100 centimeters. Again, 50 to 140. Now that depends on how hard you crank this lure. If you crank it faster, it's going to go deeper because of the bib, as we say, it's going to run it down. If you run it slower, obviously it's going to come up in the water. Right. Not getting carried away, we're talking. Next one's up. So these are your shallow runners. Now what you will notice on these is a much shallower bib, if there is a bib. There we go. So on the eyeborn, we have a teeny tiny bib. On the Komomo here, we kind of have like a cut into the mouth of it. Now what this allows these to do is to run very, very shallow. Again, depends on how hard you crank them. Things will vary depending on the lure. But the Komomo, for instance, will run at about 30 centimeters deep, but it will have a ridiculously side action. Apologies for the phone. I am going to cut this and then pick it back up in a second. Right, sorry about that. Working shop, all that jazz. So picking up where we left, I think we were at about, where were we? Running depth, actions, shallow runners. So wicked action on a Komomo. All right, it won't cast as well, but if we're fishing in shallow water, generally the fish are going to be nearer to us, so that's not an issue. But again, same kind of rules apply as we were saying on the last lot. So here we go. So we have a bait that's 118mm long. It is 19 grams, and this bait will run 5 to 30 centimeters. It's all on there. If you're not sure, just ask us. It's what we're here for. I mean, I could waffle on for days about this, but I'm trying not to on here. Third, lastly, on the hard baits, top waters. So probably the first lure that everyone comes into with bass fishing is, oh, I want one off the top. It is exciting, it is awesome, it is wicked watching bass absolutely smash these and kind of bounce them around like beach balls off the top of the water. We all know the pachinko. Most of us will now know about the spitting wires. There are lots and lots and lots of really, really good top water lures out there. Now, top water lures is probably the only one that we would be imparting a bit of action into. Now, you've got a few different actions that we can play around with. We can either send it out and then just kind of a quick bob as we run it back, almost looking like a fish that's kind of scooting out the top of the water. We can go for a low and slow, what they kind of call walk the dog, where you just clack in and slide in from left to right, and there's obviously slower, faster ways of doing that by imparting a different action into the tip of your rod as you're retrieving the lure. Main things with floating lures is, well, obviously they're going to be light because they float. What a lot of people I see miss out on is that they send the lure out, big plop, and they instantly start working the lure. Now, if you've got fish out there, those fish are going to hone into any kind of noise of something landing on the water. So, for example, you know, you've got a bunch of bass that are just sitting out chilling. Maybe you've had some gulls pick up some herring or something else, you know, they drop it in. As soon as that plop comes into the water, this lure is going to sit like so, and it always pays to just leave it a couple of seconds. If there's a fish nearby and it comes up to investigate, that fish is going to come in, he's going to have a look. You might even take it as it's sat there. If not, as you do your first couple of movements, they're going to strike and they're going to hit it. It's always worthwhile just slowing down what you're doing and just kind of reading the water and seeing what's going on. But main characteristics of a top water bait are that your eyelet will be quite low, because obviously you want to draw the lure up from the clip and get it going. And then realistically, it just goes into a whole world of random stuff. So like the spitting wires, they'll all create a different type of disturbance on the top of the water, etc, etc. But top waters, obviously we don't have to worry about any depths or anything else on the bottoms of here. We know what they're going, so the only real main things to kind of look at is obviously the size of your bait and the weight of your bait, and get out there and have a crack with them. But back end, middle of summer to the back end of summer, so much fun, it's ridiculous. Right, I'm kind of glad I've managed to get that as short as I have. Obviously any questions, drop them in underneath in the comments, and we can go well into depth. It would be good to know what everyone wants to talk about, because I like talking and this is something I like talking about. But next up will be soft plastics. Okay, so soft plastics. Right, I have literally just grabbed a couple of bits off of the shelf. As daft as this sounds, there is a lot of likeness amongst soft plastics. Where it really gets into it is all different styles of bodies, but this is basics. This is just kind of describing how we run, why we run, and what we run. So probably the most standardized soft plastic is your paddle tail. So that is a lure with a paddle on the tail, which will beat in a kind of a rhythm as you return the lure. Now, the nice thing about soft plastics is these can be worked throughout the water column completely. You can skim them across like almost damn near the top if you run them fast enough, but more importantly, you can work the depths, and you can work the depths slowly. This is what a lot of people, in my experience, miss. They send it out, they crank it back like a hard lure. Well, do you know what? If you're going to do that, use a hard lure. A soft plastic, the idea is that you can send it out, you can feed it all the way down to the bottom, you can flick it, you can kind of dead stick it, you can play around, you can twitch. You know, the whole idea is to make it look like a wounded, knackered fish on its way out, something that's easy to eat. You know, we're trying to trick bass into eating bits of plastic. So the main two differences on soft plastics is that you will have a straight, what we call a J hook. So that's what the Mighty Minnow is here. So it's a lead head, a weighted head, kind of threaded onto a soft plastic body, or the soft plastic body threaded onto the lead head, either or, you get the same thing, with an exposed hook out at the top. And then the other one that you'll get is a weedless version, which I can't show you in the box, but the idea is that the hook is shrouded. We will hook up a weedless lure. I will show you what we mean. I love this phone. I will answer that one and then come back to you guys in a second. All right, so multiple phone calls later. I have completely lost where I'm at. So I think we've covered the main bases on those. Let's rig up a couple of soft plastics, show you guys how to do that. So as I said earlier, we've got your, what we call a kind of an exposed hook, J-hook style jig head. So that is this puppy here. So straight through the body, and then that hook would come out at the top. And then what we also have is this nice little concoction here. Helps if you put it in screen. That is a weedless jig head. So if we're going to rig up a J-hook, so standard jig head, so what will happen is with quite a few of these is what you actually get in these packs is one pre-rigged lure, and then you get one spare tail. So when the tail does get beaten up, mashed up, it does happen, fish will nick the tails, you have a spare there to rig up. But obviously if you don't know how to rig it up, that's utterly pointless. So what we're going to do, we're going to rig this one straight up. So we've got our soft plastic. First thing to do is to match your jig head up, so that matches up to there. Then with your thumb, just make a rough idea of where your hook's going to be coming back out, and then just with the tip, just mark the top of that bait. There you go, and that will give you your exit hole. And then the idea of this is to run this hook as straight as you can through this body, as far down as you can get, so compressing it as it goes round the bend of the hook, and then just start teasing the hook out, and it should come out where you want it. Perfect. And then you just want to tuck that soft plastic up. So this head is actually not quite right for this body, but it does match up quite nicely. And there you go, you are hooked, rigged, ready to go. The main thing with these is to get that lure as straight as you can with that jig head in. If you have kind of bulges, twists and everything else, that is going to affect the action of the lure, and it is going to cause you problems, and you're not going to get as many fish as you should do. The other one I see a lot of with these is people matching the wrong jig head or the wrong body, vice versa. Either their hooks are too long, they're coming out further down the lure, which again will just essentially put a backbone in the lure and give you less action, whereas where we're at now, we've got a lot more action. Or actually going too short, and what will happen there is that you'll just end up with loads of fish smashing up the body of the lure without actually kind of getting a hook hold. So next one to have a look at is the weedless. So not all soft plastics can be rigged weedless. There is a lot more to this than what I'm going to say, but as a general rule of thumb, if you've got a soft plastic that's got this kind of slit in the bottom and again on the top, these are designed for weedless. You can still run them on a J-hook, that's not a problem at all, but ideally you want to make sure that you've got a bait that has these slips which allows it to collapse properly on the hook, and I'll show you why in a second. So the first part is obviously match up, make sure that that's going to sit where you want it to sit. That's pretty spot on, that's all good. Helps if I do it in the middle. So first things first, this little short kind of length here, you want to take that into consideration when you do your first pass through the lure. So in through the lure, and then coming out through the lure, roughly the same distance that we've got down here, up here. Pass that lure round, and then as you come round to that section, just twist and feed it through, and what will happen is you'll end up with something like that. So obviously the hook's now coming out the bottom, through the slit in the bottom. Now we want the hook to come out through the top. So again, mark roughly where we're at, and then bring that up, collapse the body on itself, and then just pass that hook through. Make sure it comes out through the slot in the top. Reasons why you will see in a second. And there we go. Now I've actually done that a little short. Realistically, I wouldn't have minded going a little bit further back just to butt this up to the head, but this is just to show you guys what we're on about. So that slit at the top is designed to keep that hook point tucked up like so. So you can run it over the top, and again the bottom's open so that you can collapse that down on that side as well. Again, apologies, it's in and out like Piccadilly Circus today. So that is your soft plastic weedless rigged up. The whole idea is obviously that you can then pass this through any kind of soft weed, anything like that, and you're less likely to get kind of strung up on that, less likely to catch up, and less likely to lose your lure. It is not foolproof. You still got to be careful, but it will give you a little bit more of a safety net than you would obviously get with an exposed J-hook that's going to get buried into things, and you're never going to see that again. So that has covered what I would say is the basics of soft plastics. Next up is going to be metals. Okay, so metal lures. So metals are probably closer to hard plastics than anything else, but the main thing with a metal is the fact that you can have a much smaller bait with the same weight, so therefore you would be able to cast it just as far. And then on the side of that, you know, as you upscale, obviously we're getting quite heavy with these, you can really punch them out. You can get some serious distance with the right metal, and they're also quite handy when conditions are kind of tricky. You know, you've got an onshore wind, it's fluffing up, you can get that extra distance with a metal. Or if the fish are at distance, you know, you're not going to hit that on a hard bait. You're certainly not going to hit it on a soft plastic. Sorry, throat is still knackered. So let's have a look at these. So you got two, dare I say, two main sides, keeping it basic. So we have got a cast and retrieve. Everything here is cast and retrieve, but we've got, so the classic kind of treble on the back end of the lure, attached to the front, send it out, off you go. Then on the flip side, we've got, actually I've got one out of the pack here, so we've got a metal running what we call an assist hook. Now the assist hook comes off the top of the lure. General idea on this: spank it out, retrieve it, hope that the fish comes in, follows it and smacks it. Now seekers, most of you guys probably use these by now anyway. They've become quite popular over the last couple of years. These guys will flutter in the water, they'll flutter that way around as they come in, quite enticing, they'll get smacked. These will do the same, but where these really come into their own, a lot of these with the assist hooks that is the fact that you would connect onto the split ring on the top. Now these you can actually fish a lot slower, but also what we call fishing on the drop. So when you cast this metal out, it will land in the water, and it's actually designed to do different motions on the way down. So different kind of shapes and sizes and everything else will dictate a different motion. You can either have kind of a sweepy from side to side as it goes down, so it looks like a bait fish that's been smacked by another fish and it's just floating down to the bottom. You know, that will pick up fish, and sometimes, you know, they'll just kind of come down with that flash again, looking like a wounded fish that's been absolutely smacked. Other side of these, so with assist hooks, the nice part about these is that you can, so off of walls, structures, piers, boats, anything like that, you can jig these. So if you connect onto the top, you can essentially fish it on the drop all the way down and then just whip it back up through the water and do that motion again. That technique can be absolutely deadly on the right day. We do a lot of it ourselves out on the boats and everything else, and you know what, when we're not picking them up on soft plastics that we're cranking up from the bottom, or straight kind of cast and retrieves, quite often jigging and fishing them on the drop will just produce fish after fish after fish. Again, I'm not massively going to get into this, but it's always worth packing a metal in your bag, if not two. You know, ideally one on an assist, one on a straight treble for a retrieve. There will be days when you get out there and the gulls will be working just out of casting range. Well, all of a sudden these metals will put you in casting range. So I think that is it for lure basics. I've kind of overspoken it again, but you know what, I think we really need to do a kind of lures in depth, a proper chit chat, and get right into it. I will get making those for the next lot, but for now I'm going to call that a wrap for this week's one. As ever, we're always here 8 till 5 every day bar Sunday, 8 till 4, 26 Marine Parade Worthing. Give us a call, 01903 821 594, or visit us on the website at www.primeangling.co.uk. Everything you've seen on this video is available on the web, it is available in store, and we're always here for a natter and have a slightly more in-depth chat about everything else. But until then, take care, get some bars of silver on the beach, it's that time of year, go out and enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next one.